Sorry, it cut off. We're on talking about the gurus being subordinate to the GBC. Next question: how can anyone get between the sacrosanct relationship of a Diksha guru and his disciple? Another interesting question. Get between. Our relationship, in my understanding, that we're supposed to convey to the souls that we're preaching to is that we want to regain our spiritual identities as the eternal servants of Krishna by serving this mission of Krishna consciousness, that our spiritual identities are based on being able to render some kind of service. So when we surrender to the bona fide spiritual master, we're surrendering to Krishna consciousness, to this mission, really, the mood of being a missionary servant on some level, to, show our cooperation. So it's not that anybody's trying to get in between anybody, but there are many factors involved in preaching Krishna consciousness and organizing preaching events and all these different things. So it's not that somebody's getting in between, but there are many relationships that we have with different devotees. The organizer of the big festival is one relationship, if we're serving them to help the festival. So I think the only thing that really, in one sense, the only thing that gets between us is our false egos, and that doesn't allow us to have a good service attitude. But the relationship of Diksha Guru and disciple is the wonderful relationship that's a pure spiritual relationship between the Guru and the disciple. But because we're in this movement, there are many factors of engagement. So there are many other relationships also. And we can't be immature, or we have to develop maturity to understand that we have capacity to have other relationships and our relationship with our Guru in order to carry out the mission. Number 11, the Diksha Guru knows the heart better than the GBC and the TP. Thus, the Guru's direction to the disciple should be supreme. Well, that's debatable, because we don't know who actually made the person the devotee. The Shiksha Guru may not have made the person the devotee. So when you say knows somebody's heart, what does that mean? Some kind of mystical thing? No. It means that somebody got to know that person, got to know that person's life, got to help that person navigate their life so that they could apply Krishna consciousness to their life. It depends on who the preacher is. Depends on who the Vartma Pradarshana, the introduction guru is. Depends on if the person's in a temple and there's persons who are in the position of leadership in the temple who are preaching to one, and then they suggest to that person that, maybe you should try and connect with this particular guru because you have a good relationship with them. And there's so many, it's a relationship-based situation. So I don't think, personally, some people, prefer their Shiksha Gurus to their Diksha Gurus because they get more instruction and more attention from other devotees than they get from their gurus. So they don't think that their relationship is all in all with the Diksha Guru, because they're getting a lot of relationship preaching from other devotees. That's just my own experience. Number 12, what are the sources of the GBC's No, the Diksha Guru's empowerment. Well, we're empowered, first of all, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. I know you're supposed to say according to the paper, which is perfect in that sense, but I'm just giving my also Shastric revelation, realizations of this question, that first the empowerment comes from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then it gets passed down into cyclic succession. And then Srila Prabhupada got empowered by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to publish, distribute books, and preach in the West. And then Srila Prabhupada is the empowerment behind his disciples being requested by him to become gurus and to preach Krishna consciousness all over the world, which they have done successfully, which shows that Srila Prabhupada, his empowerment was successful because this movement is spreading everywhere. Those devotees who he asked to do the service are doing it, and they're being empowered. And then the GBC, and as we're doing now, we're having this qualification stage of who's going to be accepted as a Diksha Guru and who's not. So that's also empowerment. We're taking the test, so to speak, trying to qualify to continue doing what we're doing, except now we can give people initiations. We're already giving them the holy names for decades and cultivating their devotional service and making them devotees and referring them to other gurus. But now we're getting authorized to become the Diksha Guru ourselves. Can the Diksha Guru in ISKCON continue to successfully train and guide a disciple separate and independent from the GBC? Well, that's completely circumstantial in a sense, because here I am in the middle of nowhere in Juarez, Mexico, cultivating people who are begging me to be their gurus, and I just want to do it anyway because we're in a place where there's nobody, no ISKCON gurus are coming here to preach. I have, by force of love, drug Guru Prasad Maharaj over here to Juarez a few years ago, and Jivananda's come one time, to Juarez, and so it's like, okay, you're cultivating people, but there's no ISKCON temples around. There's a little tiny preaching center in El Paso with a very, very young crew of devotees there, just brand new, pretty much 5-year-old devotees. I consider that brand new, with very little training. And so there isn't a structured ISKCON GBC temple GBC thing going on anywhere near here. So I would say, if I'm, the person who's the initiating guru here, can I successfully train and guide a disciple separate and independent? I would say I'm not independent from the rules, or independent from Prabhupada's books, or independent from the concept of our preaching mission. I'm not independent of that, but certainly we're independent because we're in the middle of nowhere and nobody's coming here. So it's you'd have to say it's a kind of an independent endeavor. I mean, it certainly looks like that. My loyalty to Prabhupada is 100%, and following his instructions in his Krishna Katha and his books and everything. So it's not independent in that way, but it's independent in the way I'm doing it, because I'm the only one here doing it. Are the resources that come to Diksha Gurus theirs to decide what to do? I guess the answer is no, it's not theirs. It's yes and no, right? When you do a festival and you happen to be the guru, but you're the organizer of a festival, and you raise the funds for the festival, then it's your responsibility to correctly spend those donations, because they gave it to you, because they have faith in you that you're going to do the festival nicely and help make devotees. So it's your God-given responsibility to spend every single cent of that money for preaching and not spend a cent on yourself for sense gratification. So it's Krishna's money that he's given to you through these people. So that's the way I look at it, because when we were doing Sankirtan in Radha Damodar days, we were trained never to keep even one penny of that money for ourselves. I never kept a penny. They would supply us with food and say, well, you can spend this much money when you're on Sankirtan for your food. So whoever the van leader was or whatever, they'd spend, we'd buy granola and buttermilk for breakfast, and we never spent money extravagantly on anything. We'd buy our clothes from the thrift store. So so in that sense, if you're the preacher and people have given you money for a particular preaching project, then maybe ISKCON has to say it's our money. I don't know if that's the way it's organized, because I don't know those rules yet. I haven't really had to deal with that situation, so I'm not really exactly sure. I think I read something previously that we're supposed to, have a special ISKCON account and all that. But I mean, I spend my own money on my preaching. I have a retirement income, and I get donations from friends who help me put on festivals, and I don't think about, oh, do I have to have some ISKCON permission to spend the money? Because I'm out here in the middle of nowhere just doing this small preaching project. I don't know, in big temples where there's GBCs and there's temple presidents. Of course, that's a completely different consideration. Where you have to, if I was doing something in a big city temple and I was going to put on a festival or got donations from my disciples, I would just give all the money to the temple. That's what I would do, because that's what I did. That's what I do now. If I go to do a book table at a temple or somewhere, whatever I sell, even if it's my own books, I give them all the money, because I'm like, you guys keep the money. I got money. I don't need any money. But I know this material world's about a lot of people's are sticky fingered, and they want to make money and make sure they have finances. So I know all these rules are in place for the protection of people's donations to make sure that they don't get misspent. And I wish that were the case everywhere under the control of the GBC, because anyway, there's lots of stories of how that's not happening in ISKCON. But that's another subject. The last one is how to resolve thinking that maybe some rule or some statement that Prabhupada made is no longer appropriate for the time and place, and how do you resolve something like that? That's a very interesting question. There's many Shastric groups, and there's many senior devotees who are preachers in our movement in a variety of countries. And there's many people that have experiences where they've had to adjust certain things to, like Prabhupada did. He came to America and had to adjust to preaching to Westerners versus folks from India. So, if there's something, it's a major principle, and we don't change our principles. Prabhupada never changed our principles. So I'm not sure exactly what it's referring to in this question, that something's no longer appropriate for a certain time and circumstance. He changed that, like when he came to America, he said, okay, now we're making ladies' ashrams. They didn't do that in India. He changed it. There's circumstances that require adjustments. Those are called details of the preaching mission. So I'm sure the GBC has some way of discussing those matters, some councils or some departments or some ministry of whatever that I'm probably not aware of. But That's an interesting idea, to try and think that we should change something that Prabhupada gave us, especially the main principles of devotional service. Because he even was lax in the beginning, like he didn't make people follow the four regular principles. He wanted them just to chant, because he could see the hippies were all a bunch of animals, basically, and he wanted them to get purified first. So he changed something. No, he just didn't give it yet. He was expert at time and circumstance. He didn't give too much for them so they would go away. He gave them the holy name and prasadam and would speak to them. And gradually so many people became devotees. And then later he told them, okay, here's our rules. So it's all a matter of intelligence and expertise in one's preaching, I think. Whether one knows to push somebody with too many rules at one time, or whether one wants to actually gradually bring them up to Krishna consciousness by not being so heavy with the rules, like Kalakanta is doing with his Krishna house. They're not pushing rules on people right away. They're just giving spirituality and then gradually bringing in more and more. So you can say, well, that's changing what Prabhupada did. But Prabhupada did the same thing. So anyway, I'm just babbling now, but that's the last of those questions. Thank you. Hare Krishna.